So here's what I say about him, Helen, Hitler, Helen the Nazis. I really don't think that he was, because I honestly think that Hitler was a good guy based upon my own research, not my public education indoctrination. I really do think before Hitler got on meth, he was a guy I'd go fishing with.
I'm sure many of you watching have seen this clip circulating on social media of Bryce Mitchell. If you didn't know about Bryce Mitchell before this, here's a bit of context. He's a UFC fighter, he's decent, but what he's been known for overall is his conspiracy theories. He believes the Earth is flat and is very outspoken about that. He said that the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting was staged and never happened, and even stupider than those two, he famously drilled a hole into his own testicle in a housework accident. So beforehand we know this is not a smart person by any means. And just a couple days ago he started a podcast, and what he said on there is why this video is being made.
He fought for his country. He wanted to purify it by kicking the greedy Jews out that were destroying his country and turning them all into gays.
First of all, Hitler's plan was never to deport Jews. The master plan was always to take them into concentration camps, a very different idea to kicking them out. Hitler never planned to deport any Jews until 1941, and by that point there was already a large population inside concentration camps. And the idea that Jewish people were turning people into gays doesn't make any sense. Just like Christianity, Judaism has always been against homosexuality historically. It's written in the Torah. There's almost no correlation between homosexuality and Judaism.
They were gaying out the kids. They were queering out the women. They were queering out the dudes. They were, you know what her first tranny surgery ever was? Happened to be in Germany before Hitler took over. You know the books that everybody makes fun of Hitler burning? You know what the books was? Queer books. Hitler burned queer books.
Bryce is correct about the first gender assignment surgery being in Germany, but queer books, as he calls them, were not the main priority for the Nazi book burning. It was mainly focused on Jewish works and communist works.
Because Hitler didn't want a bunch of queers destroying his nation. They can't produce children.
It's funny how Bryce thinks homosexuality is Germany's main issue in the 1920s, as opposed to the historical economic depression that took place in that decade as a result of World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, along with the Wall Street crash, which put Germany in a massive hole before Hitler took over.
But what about...
When he got on meth and he turned on Russia, I believe that's when he kind of went full nutty.
So 2 years after Hitler declared war on the entirety of Europe, invaded Poland, Belgium, France, Hitler was rumoured to start taking meth around 1941. And according to Bryce, that's what spurred Hitler on to attack Russia. But according to Bryce, that's the only bad thing he did up to that point.
And I don't think that he was just like the best dude ever. And when I say I go fishing with him, I'm not saying he was the most trustworthy dude or I'd love him or whatever. But at some point in Hitler's life, I don't think he was that bad of a guy. I really don't. And now, was Hitler perfect? No.
I don't think I need to say anything about this one.
But he was fighting for his people, okay? And he wanted a pure nation with people. You know what the Jews was doing? They was charging interest. Christians aren't allowed to do that.
Every single demographic is allowed to charge interest. It was a completely normal thing before the Nazis took over. Both Jewish and non-Jewish banks were charging interest in Germany around 1930.
There's plenty of Christians charging interest everywhere on the planet.
I don't.
Right now.
If you need to borrow $1,000, Rolly, I give you $1,000, and you wouldn't give me $1,100 back. You'd give me $1,000 back.
Sure.
Bryce's response to his co-host, saying that Christians also charged interest, is to say that he himself would not charge interest. Bryce Mitchell is not a bank in 1930.
But these Jews were controlling his country, bro. They were so cold and starving, they were using their valueless money as insulation. They were stuffing dollars in their jacket to stay warm. They were burning dollars in their wood stove.
That is true. Inflation led to money being worthless in Germany. But as a result of World War I, several contributing factors like the Wall Street crash, not Jews and not gays.
Hitler comes up and says, hey, I'm kicking the Jews out of here because they're killing us with interest. And then now that he lost the war, he's the bad guy.
I'm sure Bryce thinks that 12-year-old Anne Frank had some sort of role to play in the economic state of Germany in the 1930s, hence why he thinks it's justified to kick them all out of the country, and also to invade other countries and put the same people in concentration camps. Even if Bryce's theory that Jewish banks were the main issue for Germany at the time, as soon as the Nazis took over, one of the first things they did was abolish all Jewish influence, including the banks that Jewish people owned. So technically the issue had already been sorted by 1933. Bryce is insinuating that mass deportation and putting people in work camps was necessary afterwards.
Now, he ain't perfect. I'm not a Nazi. I'm not a Nazi. I don't love Nazis. I don't want Nazis to win the war. I'm just saying they were in a bad spot and Hitler come to power. But
it's
Elon is
bad to take out a whole, like, to put a whole race into camps.
Right. And that's what your public education will tell you, Rolly, because you believe your public education, because you haven't done your own research. When you realize there's no possible way they could have burned and cremated 6 million bodies, you're going to realize that they did not, the Holocaust ain't real.
Considering the cremation chambers found in concentration camps and the sheer amount of those camps across Europe, 6 million is a feasible number, especially considering lots of them were dumped in holes, not just cremated.
What about the Bolsheviks when the Jews killed tens of millions of Christians? Oh, we don't want to talk about that.
Well, I don't know much or anything.
Well, let me tell you about the Bolsheviks. It's when these Jews come over and killed the shit out of all these Christians. And they don't teach that in your public indoctrination centers.
It's confusing as to why Bryce thinks bringing up the Bolsheviks is a massive checkmate. To bring a bit of context about the Bolsheviks, if you don't know, they were a band of Marxists led by Vladimir Lenin in Russia just after World War I, after the Bolsheviks, also known as the Red Army, took power in Russia in 1918 after the Russian Revolution. Their ideology was to oppose monarchy and establish communism in the country. There was an opposing army known as the Mensheviks, or the White Army, that still had traditionalist views. The two armies with opposing ideologies clashed, which began the Russian Civil War, a war that the Bolsheviks won. The reason Bryce brings this up is there were rumours or myths that Bolshevism was of Jewish origin, but there was little to no reason behind this. Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin was an atheist, and anti-religion was a core belief in Bolshevism. The White Army, or Mensheviks, consisted mainly of Christians, as they were the traditionalists, so Bryce bringing this up as an example of Jewish evil makes no sense because they weren't Jewish at all, and it's completely irrelevant in conversation.
Guess what? That's why Tucker's getting schooled on this farm, baby, because I'm going to tell Tucker the truth. And the truth is that history is his story, okay? And history is written by the victor. Okay, Hitler lost, so you didn't get to hear his side of the war. You didn't get to hear how the Jews took his country over. You didn't get to hear what they were doing. And do I believe that he tortured Jews to death and killed them and all this stuff for fun? No, I believe that they were work camps and that they starved to death because his very army was starving to death. You know why they lost the war? They ran out of fuel.
I'm sure the decision to invade Russia at the same time was more important, and the Nazis would not have that food issue if they chose not to declare war in the first place, and put more and more people in concentration camps at the same time while fighting. And the conditions in concentration camps had no resemblance to work camps. They weren't properly fed before or during the war, and I'm baffled as to why Bryce is even defending the idea of forced labour.
They didn't have food. They didn't have fuel. They had 10 million plus prisoners. How are you going to feed them? You're not. You're losing a war. They're going to die. And that's what happened. And I don't believe that he's that bad of a guy. But I'm saying all this about Hitler to say that, if anything, Elon Musk would be against Hitler because Hitler, he was for freedom. Elon Musk is for control. Elon Musk wants to put a chip up your ass and know every thought and control every move that you make. Hitler just wanted to free his people in his prime. Now, when he got on meth, I do think he went bad. We can't talk about the Holocaust like it was a real thing in front of me because I don't believe it. I don't buy the bullshit that they try to tell you at the public school.
I think that the biggest issue, and there are things that you said, like Germany was in a bad place and Hitler was like super pro Germany and all of those things. But when you take a whole, like what we did to the Japanese during World War II, that was wrong. We can't take all the Japanese people and put them in camps. Okay?
Well, let me justify that real quick. It's time of war. Did we kill those Japs?
What's that?
Did we kill those Japs?
No.
You know there was a large Japanese prison in Arkansas?
No, I didn't know that.
Arkansas housed a lot of Japanese prisoners in World War II because what Rowley is talking about, when World War II went down, when Pearl Harbor went down, we couldn't trust none of the Japs. So all the white people and all the black people rounded up the Japs in America and put them in not concentration camps. That's a bad word. It was prisoner camps.
Yes, Japanese people living in America were indiscriminately put in prison camps, despite having no connection to the war.
They didn't starve them, though. They treated them very well, and it was very well known. Okay, Rolly, here's the question to determine what's bullshit. You're about to go and get captured. You got to your east, you got the Russians. To the west, you got the Americans coming in. Which way you running, buddy? East or west?
To the Americans.
You damn right. You bet your ass. Okay? And so I'm telling you, we put those Japs in camp because we had to for the safety of this nation, and you bet your ass we'd do it again if we had to. It was a different time, brother. It was a whole different time.
It's actually well documented that Japanese-American war camps in World War II had terrible conditions. Each accommodation was built for 4, but housed 25 people. Each person was allowed 45 cents worth of food, and several Japanese prisoners were shot.
And also, I don't think there's as many Japanese people in America as there is today.
Well, regardless, during wartime, I understand that things are different, right?
Things are different,
but there's certain things that I can't. I think that there's a better way. For example, I don't think taking our best generation and again, I know my lane is not to be a military scholar, but I can tell you there's a war in Europe. I'm not taking my son and sending him on the beach in Normandy. There's another way. And just flooding the machine gunners and running up our best generation, 17, 18-year-old kids, up a beach through water to storm France, I'm not going to do it. I'm absolutely not going to send my son, and I wouldn't go either. There had to have been another way. And I think it was such an egregious loss of men to take that beach.
While there were flaws in the planning of D-Day, mainly because of the desperate times that Allied forces were in, D-Day was actually less disastrous than Saving Private Ryan makes it seem. There were 5 separate beaches invaded on the same day, in very separate locations. Most of the beaches, in particular Utah Beach, had more favourable geography for an invasion because of the lack of sand dunes and seawalls. The other 4 beaches were stormed relatively simply. The only beach that was accurate in terms of how it was portrayed was Omaha Beach because of the difficult geography, but that was a very essential position to invade, relating to trading routes across the English Channel, which became essential for Operation Overlord as they pushed into Germany.
I just can't.
Let me try to justify it. Let me try to justify D-Day because it does sound like a really bad strategy. We lost a lot of people.
If they're not your kids, it is.
Yeah. Well.
I mean, if it's your kids,
Rolly,
it is. But if it's
Rolly, I know what you're saying, brother. I know what you're saying. You care about Americans. That's what you're saying. You don't
care
want
about
Americans.
people in
you
general.
Care about
people. We can't fight every war, and that was Europe's war.
So let me try to justify it, brother. The D-Day incident. First thing I got to say, did you know that 45 tanks were supposed to be with them to provide those men cover? You know what happened to all of them except 2?
They sank.
The numbers were off, but the tanks did sink.
They got off that boat and they sank in the water. There's 4 men in each tank. So instantly, all of our ground covering tanks at the bottom of the ocean dead. That was supposed to be our cover for our men, our heavy artillery.
Well, and the bombing that missed. And,
But here's the thing, is that they were already invading from the south, correct? Up through Italy.
Yes, they did fight in Italy a year before.
It might have been the only option or the best option, is what I'm saying. And yeah, dude, it would have freaking sucked, bro.
I mean, there's a lot of rationalizations, and we rationalize allying with Russia, who killed close to 20 million people. Like Stalin was, we allied with Stalin, and then we gave them. What do we do after World War II? We gave them Eastern Europe.
I'm aware this co-host isn't claiming to be a historical expert, but the Allied forces didn't give anything away to the Soviet Union. It was a combined effort between the Allied forces and the Soviet Union to close in on Germany. The Soviets divided Berlin, took the eastern half of the city. Allied forces took the western side. The Soviets then claimed almost all of Eastern Europe, east of Germany. It was a very mutual exchange. Nothing was given over to the Soviets.
And don't think for a second that there ain't Jews out there that believe Christians are subhuman. Okay? So, I have no hatred in my heart. I've never killed a Jew, bro. So don't come out here and say that I'm some Jew hater or some Muslim hater or whatever, bro. Because if I meet you at the airport and we're saying hi and you ask for a picture or we just want to talk, I'm going to treat you just like a person. I'm talking about groups of people that systematically control things. And there's very few people that do that, be them Muslims, Christians, or Jews.
Bryce, like a lot of conspiracy people, struggled to distinguish between banking people who charge interest on loans to the overall population of people with Jewish heritage. That does it for most of the insane stuff that Bryce has said. Either way, I recommend watching Bryce Mitchell get knocked out by Josh Emmett. That fight's been played a lot recently. Like and subscribe, leave a comment. Goodbye.